When my son called me after 3 years of silence, I thought maybe, finally, my prayers had been heard. His voice trembled on the other end, polite but cold. "Mom, I'm getting married. I want you there." That was all he said. "No, how have you been? No, I've missed you." Just those few clipped words, like an obligation. But still, I said yes, because that's what mothers do. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, staring at the phone, my hands shaking. The house was quiet, the kind of heavy quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I whispered to myself, "He called. That means something." Life had been small since Daniel left. I filled my days with simple routines, morning tea on the porch, watering the same stubborn rose bushes he planted when he was 10, and volunteering twice a week at the community center. People there called me Miss Lila. They didn't know me as Daniel's mother, just as the woman who always brought cookies and asked about everyone's kids. But every night, I'd set an extra plate at the dinner table. Habit, I guess. See, Daniel wasn't always distant. When his father, Marcus, disappeared from our lives, Daniel became my reason to breathe. I worked double shifts at the diner, saved every tip to pay for his schooling, and still came home to cook him dinner, even when I was too tired to eat it myself. He used to say, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you." I'd laugh, ruffle his hair, and tell him, "Just love me, baby. That's all I'll ever need." But somewhere along the line, something changed. It started small. A missed call. Then fewer visits. Then silence. For years. And now, suddenly, this wedding invitation, like a stone thrown into still water, stirring up all the quiet pain I'd forced myself to forget. The following week, I found the invitation in my mailbox. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, with gold lettering. Daniel Clara. Clara. I rolled the name on my tongue. I didn't know her, hadn't even known he was seeing someone. Inside, there was a neat little note in his handwriting. "Mom, I hope you'll come. It would mean a lot." No apology. No explanation. Just hope and distance. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in slow motion. I bought a new dress, pale blue, modest but soft. I wanted to look respectable, not desperate. I practiced my smile in the mirror, the one that didn't show too much sadness. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, looking out at the streetlights, thinking about the last time I'd seen him. He'd been 21. We'd fought about his father, mostly. Marcus had reached out suddenly after years of being gone, wanting to reconnect. I'd warned Daniel to stay cautious. But he was young, full of hope, and eager to believe his father had changed. That night, Daniel had shouted, "You just don't want me to have him. You can't stand not being in control." It was the first time he'd raised his voice at me, and the last time he spoke to me at all. The morning of the wedding was bright and crisp. The church was decorated with white lilies and pale gold ribbons. Everything looked perfect, almost painfully so. I sat near the front, my heart pounding, clutching my small purse like a lifeline. People I didn't recognize whispered politely as they passed. When the music began, I stood along with the others. My eyes blurred as Daniel walked down the aisle, handsome in his navy suit. He looked taller, broader, older, but the same. The same shy smile, the same dimples. When his eyes met mine, there was a flicker, recognition, guilt, maybe, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Then the bride walked in. Clara was beautiful. Dark curls, gentle eyes, the kind of woman you could tell had kindness in her smile. But what caught me off guard wasn't her beauty, it was the woman beside her. A woman about my age, holding her arm, guiding her down the aisle with pride and tears in her eyes. Daniel turned, slightly, smiling at her. And then, with the microphone in hand, he said, "Before we begin, I want to thank both my mothers for being here today." The room fell silent. Both. He turned to her. "This is Miriam, my biological mother. She found me last year." My breath caught in my chest. Biological mother? I could hear the sound of my pulse in my ears. The woman, Miriam, smiled kindly at me. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you," she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the ceremony passed like a blur. Their vows, the laughter, the applause, it all sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I clapped when everyone clapped. I smiled when expected. But inside, I was shattering quietly, piece by piece. At the reception, Daniel approached me, hesitant. "Mom," he began, his voice low. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but I forced a smile." "You've been busy," I said. He looked away. "Miriam reached out to me last year. She's been looking for me since the adoption agency told her they'd lost track. She thought she'd never find me." I blinked. "Adoption agency?" He froze. You didn't know?" Something in me went cold. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" He swallowed hard. "Dad told me. He said you adopted me when you two got married. That's why you never talked about my real mother." My world tilted. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I gave birth to you." He frowned, confusion clouding his eyes. Dad said. I shook my head.
Markus lied.
He looked at me, torn between belief and disbelief, the years of distance thick between us. "Why would he lie?" he asked. I wanted to say, because he always lied. Because he couldn't stand to see me have something good. Because destroying me was the only thing he'd ever been consistent about. But all I said was, "I don't know, baby. But you're my son. You always have been." He didn't respond, just nodded slowly, as if trying to rewrite years of memory in a single moment. That night, when I got home, I sat in the dark living room and cried for the first time in years. Not because of anger, but because of the cruel, quiet realization that love, no matter how deep, can be buried under lies long enough to be forgotten. And maybe that's exactly what Markus had planned all along. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of rain. It wasn't the gentle kind, it was steady, insistent, the kind that soaks everything it touches. The kind that makes you sit still and think. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of tea. The air smelled faintly of wet soil and regret. I kept replaying Daniel's words in my head. "Dad told me you adopted me." I whispered it out loud, as if saying it again would make it make sense. "He told you I adopted you." I wanted to scream, to break something, to call Markus and demand why he would poison our son's heart like that. But Markus was gone, disappeared years ago into whatever shadows he crawled from. And maybe that was the hardest part. You can't fight a ghost. You can only live with the wreckage they left behind. 2 days later, I got a text. "Daniel, can we talk?" Just 3 words, but I read them over and over. I hesitated before replying. "Me. Of course. Always." He came by that evening. The house looked different to him. I could tell. He stood in the doorway, scanning the living room, the family photos, the embroidered curtains, the sofa he used to jump on as a boy. "Feels smaller," he said. "You just got taller," I replied, forcing a smile. He laughed softly, and for a second, he looked like my little boy again, the one who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard and call them for Mama's table. Then his smile faded. "I need to understand, Mom. All these years, Dad made it sound like you took me from someone else. That you pretended I was yours." His words stung, even though I'd heard worse in my life. I took a deep breath and sat down. "Sit with me, Daniel. Please." He did. The rain tapped lightly against the window, filling the silence. "When you were born," I began, "I nearly died in labor. The doctor said it was a miracle you made it through. Markus wasn't even at the hospital. He was out gambling with friends. When I told him we had a son, he said, 'That's good. Maybe he'll grow up better than me.'" Daniel looked at me quietly. His eyes softened, but his jaw stayed tight, like he wanted to believe but didn't know how. "Why didn't you tell me he lied?" he asked. "Because you loved him," I said simply. "And I didn't want to take that away from you." I thought the truth would come from his mouth one day, not twisted, not weaponized. I was wrong. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. He said Miriam was my real mother, that she wanted me back but you wouldn't let her near. I sighed. "I don't know who Miriam is, Daniel. I don't know why she believes she's your mother, but if she truly thinks she gave birth to you, then someone lied to her too. The room fell quiet again. I met her, he said softly. She has pictures, baby photos. Ones that look like me. The same blanket, the same mark on my shoulder. I blinked. A mark? He pulled back the collar of his shirt. On his left shoulder, near the collarbone, was a small, faded birthmark, shaped like a crescent moon. I felt the air leave my lungs. You had that since birth. I used to call it your little moon. Marcus said it made you special. He stared at me, long, searching. She said the same thing. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a simple lie. This was a theft. Someone had stolen someone else's child. And somehow I was in the middle of it. After Daniel left that night, I went digging. Old photo albums, hospital papers, anything that could prove what I already knew in my bones. I found your hospital bracelet, still tucked inside an envelope marked June 3rd, 1996. My name, Lila Harris, and the baby's name, Daniel Harris. I ran my fingers over the ink until it smudged. Then, tucked behind a folder of medical records, I found something else, an old letter, yellowed and half-torn. The handwriting was Marcus's. Lila, I'm sorry. There were complications with the baby. The hospital made a switch. Don't ask questions. The boy's fine. Just raise him as your own. The words blurred through my tears. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter to my chest, whispering, "Oh God, what did you do?" Marcus had always been reckless, but this was monstrous. If what he said was true, Daniel wasn't my biological son. But that didn't matter. I had raised him, loved him. He was mine in every way that mattered. Still, the thought of another woman, another mother, wondering all these years where her baby went, broke something in me. The next morning, I called Daniel. "Son," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think I have something you should see." We met at a cafe halfway between my town and his. He looked tired, older somehow. Miriam came with him. When she walked in, I stood. "Miriam," I said softly, extending my hand. She shook it, her eyes glassy. "Lila." She was beautiful in a worn, familiar way, kindness in her face, grief in her posture. I slid the envelope across the table. Marcus wrote this. I just found it. She read it silently, her lips trembling. Then she whispered, "I knew it. I knew my baby didn't die that day." Daniel froze. "D?" She looked at him. "They told me my son was stillborn. I never saw him. Just a blanket. They took him away before I could hold him." I felt dizzy. Daniel sat back, his face pale. "So, I was switched." Miriam nodded. "Someone must have taken you from me. Your father." She stopped, glancing at me. I filled in the words. "Marcus. He must have bribed someone at the hospital. Told me there was a complication. Brought you home and said you were ours." Daniel's hands were shaking. "So none of this was either of your faults." I reached across the table. "No, baby. You were never a secret. You were a miracle to both of us." Tears ran down his face. He didn't pull away when I took his hand. Miriam reached for it too, and for the first time, the three of us sat there, not as enemies, but as people bound by one man's lies and one child's love. That night, I drove home in silence. The rain had stopped, but the road still glistened under the streetlights. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty but open. Sometimes truth doesn't heal right away. Sometimes it just clears the fog, so you can finally see what's broken. And that, I realized, was the first step to mending it. I thought that after the truth came out, things would finally start to settle. That Daniel, Miriam, and I could find some kind of peace. But peace doesn't come just because you know the truth. It comes when you learn to live with it. And Daniel wasn't ready. He stopped answering my calls again. He stopped visiting. I didn't blame him this time. He was lost between two mothers, two lives, and one giant lie that rewrote everything he thought he knew. Then, one evening, I got a wedding invitation. It came in a cream-colored envelope with gold trimming. The handwriting was elegant, Careful, his fiancé's, not his. Daniel Harris, Emily Rhodes invite you to celebrate their union. My hands trembled when I reached the bottom of the card. Location: Rosewood Gardens, Saturday, 5 p.m. And then, a handwritten note below. Mom, I want you there.
Please. D. Just that.
No explanation. No apology. But I didn't need one. It was enough. The day of the wedding, I wore a simple navy blue dress, the same one I wore to his college graduation. My hair had more gray in it now, but I didn't bother to hide it. I wasn't going there to look perfect. I was going there to be present. When I arrived, I noticed her immediately, Miriam. She stood near the front row, wearing soft lavender, a small corsage pinned to her dress. She looked nervous, just like me. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us smiled. There was too much between us. Too many years, too many tears. But then Daniel appeared. He looked so handsome in that suit, tall, composed, but his eyes still carried that flicker of boyish warmth. When he saw both of us, his lips curved into a small, trembling smile. He walked over and took one of my hands, then one of hers. He placed them together. Moms, he said softly, I don't want to choose. I can't. You both made me who I am. I felt the tears before I could stop them. Miriam squeezed my hand gently, and I nodded. You don't have to choose, I said. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Miriam smiled then, a real one. He's lucky to have you. No, I said, we're lucky to have him. The ceremony began. When Daniel said his vows, his voice broke only once, when he looked at me. My mother taught me that family isn't about blood, he said, voice steady but eyes wet. It's about the people who show up.
Who stay.
Even when they're hurt. I felt something deep inside me finally unclench. After the ceremony, as guests danced and laughed under the fairy lights, I stood a little away from the crowd. Miriam joined me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. To survival, she said, raising hers. To motherhood, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. We both laughed softly, a fragile sound, but real. Then she said something that caught me off guard. You know, Marcus didn't just steal a baby. He stole our peace. I nodded. And now he's gone. No apologies. No explanations. She looked out over the garden, her expression distant. Maybe that's his punishment, being forgotten. I thought about that for a long time. Maybe she was right. Later that evening, Daniel came over, his tie loosened, his smile warm. You two seem like old friends, he joked. I laughed. Don't push your luck. He grinned, but then his tone turned serious. I want to tell you both something. Emily and I are planning to start a family soon, and when we do, I want both of you to be part of our child's life. No confusion. No secrets. I felt my heart swell. That's the best gift you could give us. He hugged me then, a real hug. The kind that says thank you, and I'm sorry without needing words. And as I held him, I realized something. For years, I'd been afraid that I'd lose him, that truth would take him away. But truth didn't destroy us. It freed us. Months later, Miriam and I started talking regularly. Sometimes about Daniel, sometimes about recipes, sometimes about nothing at all. She told me she joined a support group for mothers who'd lost children through hospital errors and adoption scams. I started volunteering there with her. We weren't best friends, not yet, but there was mutual respect, a quiet understanding between 2 women who had both loved the same boy from different ends of the same lie. And Daniel? He calls every Sunday. Sometimes he says, "Hi, Mom," and I never ask which one he means. Because maybe he means both. The past doesn't disappear when you face it. It doesn't vanish or rewrite itself. But it does soften, like a scar that stops hurting when you finally accept it's part of you. And every time I hear Daniel's laugh, see him holding Emily's hand, or get a random photo of them cooking together, I thank the universe. Not for the pain, but for the way love endured it. Moral: sometimes family isn't defined by the blood in your veins, but by the hands that held you when you needed them most. And even the deepest betrayal can lead to the truest kind of love, if you're brave enough to face the truth. Daniel and Emily had a little girl, Lila. The first time I held her, she wrapped her tiny fingers around my thumb and refused to let go. Her skin was warm, her eyes half open, curious about everything. And in that moment, I realized something so simple yet profound. I wasn't just Daniel's mother anymore. I was someone's grandmother. Miriam was there too, of course. We took turns babysitting, bringing soups and soft blankets, spoiling that child more than either of us ever admitted out loud. Our relationship had become peaceful. Not perfect, but honest. I thought the story had ended. That life had finally given us the quiet we all deserved. But one afternoon, the phone rang, and the past found me again. It was Detective Halloran, the same man who'd helped Miriam years ago uncover the adoption fraud. "Mrs. Harris," he said, his voice carrying that careful tone people use when they're about to break something fragile. "I wanted to inform you that we've finally closed the Marcus Taylor case." My heart stuttered. I hadn't heard that name in years. "Closed?" I asked quietly. "You found him." He paused. "We found his remains, ma'am." The air went still. For a moment, I could only hear the ticking of the kitchen clock. "Where?" "An abandoned cabin near Clearwater Ridge." He'd been living there under another name. "We believe he passed away about 2 years ago." I closed my eyes. I didn't know what I felt. Sadness? Relief? Both. Neither? Then the detective said something that made my blood run cold. There was a letter in his things.
Addressed to you.
When the envelope arrived a week later, I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, or maybe closure, got the better of me. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting familiar. Slanted. Confident. Marcus's. "Helen," it began. "If you're reading this, I suppose I didn't make it far. I want to tell you something before time swallows me for good. I never stole Daniel out of malice. I did it because I wanted to save someone from a mistake I couldn't undo. The truth is, Daniel was mine, but not with Miriam." I froze. "You were right all along. He's your son." My breath caught. I had to reread it 3 times before the words made sense. Marcus wrote that during his affair with Miriam, she became pregnant, but the timing was uncertain. When she gave birth, the hospital believed Daniel was hers. Marcus, terrified of losing me and desperate to fix the chaos he'd created, bribed the nurse to falsify records and switch identification tags. So Daniel, the baby I believed I'd adopted out of Miriam's tragedy, was in fact the child I'd conceived and carried without knowing it. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at those pages. All I know is that the tears came quietly, not of grief this time, but something heavier. For years, I'd punished myself for loving a boy I thought wasn't mine. For years, I'd mourned the child I believed I'd lost. And both of those lives had been the same boy. I called Miriam the next day. When I told her, there was silence. Then she laughed, softly, bitterly. "So, after everything, he managed to betray both of us." "Yes," I whispered. "But maybe he also gave us something, even if by accident." She sighed, her voice trembling. "It doesn't change how I feel about Daniel. He'll always be mine too." "I know," I said gently. "And maybe that's the point. Maybe love doesn't need to belong to one person. It just is." We agreed not to tell Daniel, not yet. Some truths don't need to destroy peace just to prove they're real. Sometimes the heart already knows what the blood later confirms. A month later, I stood by the river where Marcus's ashes had been scattered. The wind was cool that morning, and the sunlight shimmered across the surface like broken glass. I didn't forgive him, not completely. But I did thank him. For the boy I got to raise.
For the woman I became. And
for the strength I never knew I had until I had no other choice. Now, when Daniel visits with Lila, I watch them play in the garden, their laughter echoing against the old brick walls of my home. Miriam joins us sometimes, sitting in the wicker chair beside me, sipping tea. And between us, there's no resentment anymore. Only quiet understanding, the kind that can only grow from shared heartbreak. I look at Daniel, his hand steady on his daughter's back, and I think, maybe love is never perfect. Maybe it's never clean or simple. But it endures. It survives secrets, lies, even the dead. Because the truth, in the end, is not just what's written in letters or birth certificates. It's in the love that stayed.